tea and mind my business
That's
because
all right,
Layla got all the
everyone.
loudmouth sisters on her page. All the
Hey, sis, we live.
sisters come
We
on Layla
live.
page.
We
We
live. We
live,
live. We
Zara.
live.
Zara's ready to go. She got her tea and everything. Assalamualaikum, everyone. I'm Layla Abdullah-Poulos, and welcome to Everyday Muslims online discussion, U.S. Muslim cultural roots of African American Muslim art and artistry, an exploration of past, present, and future African American Muslims art and entertainment. Joining me today is author Zara J and producer Khalil Ismail. Both have extensive experience in creating, networking, and promoting artistic productions of African American Muslims, and I'm really excited to get their perspectives on some things. A little bit about Zara. Best-selling author Zara J began her career as an urban fiction writer. I found out who you were, by the way. She then launched a publishing company and started writing Muslim fiction novels with the objective of giving the world a glimpse into Muslim courtship experiences in the West. Her debut Muslim fiction novel, Diary Divas, became an Amazon bestseller within 24 hours of its release. Zara J prides herself on creating exciting, dramatic tales that non-Muslims can enjoy as well. In addition to writing novels, Zara J is founder and president of Black Muslim Singles Society, a matchmaking service. According to the matchmaking website, it is a way to bring together men and women who are not looking to meet other singles, but also want to build and bridge professional gaps within the Black Muslim culture. The society serves as a web of opportunity to connect with many Black Muslims in different industries, events, and information to directly improve Black Muslim life. Welcome, Zara. Now, Khalil Ismail is a world-renowned musician and lyricist, and he has released 6 studio albums and is currently producing 2 additional albums. You're busy because you also got the filmmaking and everything. You don't stop, do you, brother?
Can't.
Okay. His music is enjoyed in more than 40 countries and has been licensed to major companies. Khalil Ismail is a soul-stirring performer whose commitment to social responsibility and emotional honesty is reflected both on and off stage. As a performing artist, Khalil has a unique penchant for connecting authentically to a wide variety of audiences, cultures, and nationalities. As a producer, Khalil loves to tell a soulful, moving story with instruments. He achieves this by fusing simplicity and dynamic attention to detail. As a filmmaker, Khalil Ismail has recently directed 2 short films and is currently planning his first feature-length film. Speaking of one of your short films, which is His Other Wife, when is it coming to New York?
We're talking about it. We're talking
All right,
about
y'all gotta come up here. I'm like, y'all got me chomping at the bit.
We're coming, inshallah, soon.
I was trying to get down there, but you know, sister got kids and a husband, she can't get down there all the time.
I understand. It's definitely on our radar. One of the next places, inshallah.
No, when you go. All right, so we're going to talk about African American Muslim art and artistry, okay, as part of the cultural discussion of NBA Muslims, which stands for Native Born American Muslims. A lot of people ask me what that means, and there are specific parameters that are set up for NBA Muslims in particular, which is the blog that I do, and as well as the online discussions and other cultural commentary that I make. Is a very specific subgroup of American Muslim culture. And the parameters are really surround 2 things. First of all, they're members of American society, have a deeply rooted heritage in American society. And that presents itself different ways. For African American Muslims, for example, it would be a connection to the heritage of enslaved Africans brought here early in the country's history. That's one. The other thing is that there's a nascent application of Islam, meaning that although it may have some influences from overseas, it's not exclusively so. One prime example is the Nation of Islam that kind of came up, and many people call it heretical. It really was something that was an application of Islam very much here. And then later on, you had African-American Muslim scholars go over there and come back. And so it's like kind of it is developing into its own very unique culture. And that's the way it presents itself in African-American Muslim culture. Of course, there are 3 other subgroups, which is Native American, Latino American, and Euro-American, which all present themselves different ways. And I'm not going to go into that because this discussion is not about Native Americans, Latino Americans, or European Americans, but African Americans. And it's particularly the African American art and artistry, which has a pretty deep history, especially when it comes to music. Can you give me a little bit of background information about the music in African American Muslim culture, Khalil?
Okay, well, I mean, basically, I think one of the first really notable popular instances of African Americans being recognized in music history is in jazz. There are a number of major jazz musicians, you know, including John Coltrane, who they say converted to Islam, Yusuf Lateef, and these were mainstream artists who were world-renowned, known as, you know, some of the best of their time in general, not just, you know, amongst Muslims. And then, of course, after that, you know, hip hop, you know, I think this is around, just say the 30s, 40s, and 50s. I mean, really, you can go back as far, you can really go back to, you know, during the times of slavery. We know that there were many, you know, Muslims, though we don't have a, you know, account, but music was used, art was used as a way to actually send messages, to escape, you know, for escape routes and the like. And it was just a natural part of, you know, what we did. So I think that it really, I think it really kind of came, I would say, you know, really came to the forefront with hip hop, where everyone, you know, where people started to make references to Islamic terms, you know, and what have you. And, you know, that's really where, and many people, black, white, you know, Latino, converted to Islam based on the references to hip hop. So music has been very instrumental, and Muslims in music have been very instrumental, really, since African Americans have engaged in music.
Okay. Well, I know that like I told you before, my expertise when it comes to music is very limited.
Yeah.
And I do know about, you know, like the hip hop, the influence of hip hop, where it seemed that it was more a matter of there was so many so many Muslims that were involved in hip hop, and like you said, they integrated the language into the hip hop, that it seemed to have a very big influence in the culture, and kind of stabilize the Muslim presence in hip hop. Even like to today, you still have African American Muslims in hip hop, very famous African American Muslims to today. What about literature? Let's move a little bit into literature. Zara, would you like to kind of like speak on that?
As far as just like the transition, or?
Well, I've gone the research that I have specifically focuses on fiction. So let's kind of like focus on fiction. That's like kind of really a place where there's a lot of social commentary that's being made by American Muslims, and especially African American Muslims specifically. And I think kind of really broke out with Zakiya, and then you came along, and now there's a whole bevy of African American Muslims, to the point where when I was doing my initial research in literature, I had a much bigger tent that I was dealing with, but the authorship wasn't there in terms of when I was looking at Muslims. The African American Muslims had a larger canon of work that they produced and presented to the world.
Right. So what's interesting about that, so I'm going to touch on what you just said about, you know, representation as far as African American Muslims in the genre. Of course, like Zakiya is like one of the, like, you know, everyone knows, and you know, she's been doing it for so long, you know, and Jawari as well. But what's interesting is that I think that we sometimes forget, even as African American Muslims, that Islam and Muslims, whether it's in the best light or maybe not the best light sometimes, has also definitely played a major role in urban fiction as well. So you have stories like True to the Game, where, you know, Muslims were a part of that story, like one of the main characters was Muslim. You have stories like The Coldest Winter Ever, where the story, the main character Moonlight, who goes on by Sister Soldier, goes on and writes another series based upon Moonlight, and what it was like for him as a African boy who moves to New York, who's a Muslim, and adjusting to life in America as well. So Islam, you know, and on the fiction side, Muslim fiction, but even for African American fiction and for urban fiction particularly, has always been, you know, a part of the background as part of our African American identity. I don't think Islam was ever totally forgotten, because especially with these books, the time that they were coming out, like the time period that Khalil mentioned as far as hip-hop was very prevalent at this time, you know, the late 80s, early 90s, mid 90s. When urban fiction was also starting to take off as well. So you were seeing that merge of hip hop, of Muslims, of fiction, and all these things where just that urban culture and Black culture was all merging together. So I feel like that representation has always been there, just maybe not always in the best forms or the strongest forms, but the fact that hip hop, but African Americans and Islam, that combination, I feel like is very much a part of our identity. Even for non-Muslims, they still know and identify and can recognize Muslims. Now, when you come talking about fiction, definitely when I transitioned from to Muslim fiction, you know, I'm actually working on a new blog right now to, you know, tell more about this transition and talk more about just, you know, writing urban fiction, Muslim fiction. You know, going from that transition, I remember one of the first things actually my mother told me was, you know, you're going to lose a lot of fans.
Mm.
You know, so it was definitely something that I feel like as an artist or as an author, you kind of are prepared to go in for the passion and for the message and for wanting to give some sort of representation, and not necessarily to, you know, be this like big author or anything of that sort. You're doing it for the love and for the desire to communicate with other audiences and to be able to represent African American Muslims, or to be able to represent Muslims in fiction, be able to have some type of control over your narrative. And I feel like with Muslims, that it's really important that Black American Muslims or African American Muslims, that we feel like it's really important to represent what Islam means to us, because we have a very distinct culture. Through fiction, we're able to shed light in what that culture looks like, because it is a blend. You know, your mic just went mute. Layla, your mic went mute.
I'm here. I'm here.
Okay.
I had to tell my boys to shut up. I was trying to be smooth, but you.
I know, right? I was like, she kept talking. I was like, okay.
I'm sorry, but yeah, but you know, it's a blend. And our style of literature and our style of writing, I feel like it's really important to represent, because we have our own voice, and that voice is significant. It's significant and unique. So, you know, I think that it is important for us to be representatives in the genre and to speak about what that very American-like culture is to us as Muslims.
Hey, can I share the link? Is there a link really quickly? Is there a link that I can share real quick? I don't.
Oh, for the online?
Yeah.
It's right on NBA Muslim's website, and also on the Facebook page.
Okay. All right. Okay, go ahead.
And you'd be able to click the little thingy, and it's a share thing, but you know, I don't know it that well. I definitely agree that we have African American Muslims have a very unique voice. Sometimes I see it as two things. Something that's inside of Muslim culture and outside of Muslim culture. And all of it has to do with the application of the religion, to the point where it's like, even if you're outside of Muslim culture, that identity becomes something that you infuse into your artistry. Right. Not all African Muslim artists do it, but quite a significant number of them do it, so that some of the language of people who follow this artistry and patronize this artistry, it becomes very, very familiar. Just in the same way that the religion became familiar in a lot of Black communities over time. Mm-hmm. Of course. in ways that it hasn't in white communities in society, where it's just like, oh, you're Muslim, well, you know, my uncle's cousin's friend is Muslim, and you know, assalamu alaikum. Those become like very, very general parts of the culture.
Right.
So I think in artistry, because we represent, we many artists infuse it into their artistry, that it's also a part of the artistry in general. So whether they're inside the culture or outside of the American Muslim culture, it's just something that's constant. It's a constant thing. It's not necessarily something that you see with other American Muslim artists. And I can only really kind of speak to literature, the literature that I've been noticing. You know, I was asked once at a conference where I was doing a presentation on Black Muslim romance, ironically enough, what is the difference between Black, non-Black Muslim fiction? And one of the things that I've noticed is that the religion, the deen itself, is so prominent in Black Muslim fiction, and I think that, you know, it's something that's feeding into what we've been always doing as Black African American Muslims, which is taking our artistry and using it to assert our voices and our narratives and our experiences in ways that other people have not been necessarily doing. So in that, I think that in that instance, the application of the deen itself becomes so influential. Would you agree?
I
Khalil?
definitely agree. I'm sorry. I just wanted to share the link with some others too. But I don't see the link in the event page.
It's right. Hold on, I'm gonna have to
just tag me in it.
Tell me if you can.
But no, I definitely agree with what you're saying as far as you know, the deen being a major part of it. And I know you and I have had these discussions before, and I've asked you that, you know, what do you feel is the difference between fiction or stories written by Muslims versus Muslims? And you've always mentioned that you feel like the deen is very much at the forefront. I think that's because for us, you know, for African American Muslims particularly, I think that it's that we don't feel that need to assimilate and to show that we are the same. You know, we feel the same. We don't have to express that. We're not looking to, you know, have other people see like, look, you know, our lives are just as normal as anyone else's. So I don't think that we need to put the deen on the back and try to bring the front, because, you know, we don't feel that disconnection to the overall American society or to the African American community. You know, our culture is such a blend between, you know, American culture, African American culture, and Muslim culture. So, you know, for us, it's the desire to put the deen out there, because we kind of need it to be more on the forefront of our representation, to show us that the deen is what makes us different. So, and not so much in a way to run away from it, but in a way to shine light on how we use it to balance our everyday lives and our struggles and our drama and relationships and everything else.
Do you think that African American artists are especially in literature, are really kind of into the African American Muslim culture? I mean, the deen becomes so prominent in so many lives of African American Muslims that when they're looking for something, when they're looking at something, and especially if it says Muslim, definitely to have some reference, some integrating of the language of worship, and addressing things that are particular to being an American Muslim and being an African American Muslim. So do you think that we a lot of the authors are actually doing that?
I'm sorry, you're breaking up some. Hello?
See, that's the thing, American Muslim authors. Can you hear me now?
Yes, now I can hear you.
Okay.
You were kind of going in and out for a second.
I'm sorry. Do you think that African American Muslim authors are intuitively writing in a way that will have their work relatable to African American Muslims, when because the deen has so much significance as a way of life as opposed to an aspect of cultural identity? when you see something, and especially if it has something that's saying, oh, this is a Muslim thing, that you're expecting certain things. You're expecting the integration of the language. You're expecting the prioritization of worship and spirituality. So do you think that a lot of African American authors, this is something that they're getting from the culture and they're in responding to that?
You mean African American Muslim authors?
Yes.
Okay. And that they're responding. I just want to make sure, because you're still breaking up a little bit. So I just want to make sure that I got the question clear.
I apologize.
I just want to make sure that I have the question clear. That the question is, do I think that this African American Muslims or African American authors are responding to the need for?
Well, a spiritual aspect is not necessarily something that is across the board when it comes to American Muslim fiction. A lot of the American Muslim fiction by non-African American Muslims, I got to say non-Black Muslims, just to be quite honest with you, because there are some African Muslims that have written works that are is very, very conducive with what I see with African American Muslim authors, and that is like this embracing and of writing about the deen as a deen, as opposed to a religious or cultural identity. It's really about the deen and how they're navigating through that deen. It's not something that's off on the side. It's something that's very much a part of the majority of the time. I, you know, if they're writing about Muslims, it's definitely going to be front and center, you know. So this, do you think that this a response to expectations of the culture?
I just yeah, you started breaking up right at that tail end, but it's okay. I think I got the bulk of it. I think that what you just said, you know, is a great point, and the fact that, you know, as African Americans, period, spirituality is a great part of being able to maintain existence in this country. So I think that our spirituality is just a part of a lot of things that we do and that we create. And so, you know, with it, what you're saying about it being on the forefront and not just being a cultural thing, because I don't feel like for us that we have fully established Islam as a culture in our community. You know, sometimes for those who come from big families, or maybe they, you know, they've kind of distanced themselves a little bit from Islam, or, you know, maybe to them it is just a cultural thing, and that's how they socialize and that's how they communicate, is through Muslims as it is as a culture. I think it might be slightly different, but I think for African American Muslims, because our presence in the African American Muslim community, I think is still relatively new, where we are still trying to figure out how to balance it all, because, you know, we can't distance ourselves from the problems that we have in the African American community, or I don't even want to say problems, but the challenges that we have, and the challenges that we face as African American men and women. I don't think that you can just totally separate that and act as if that desire and that need for spirituality to keep you motivated, to keep you balanced, and your desire to try to figure it out. Because, you know, whether you grew up in a Muslim family or you know, came into Islam later in your life, I think that if you're a practicing Muslim and you're really striving to practice, that constant tug of war, trying to hold on to it and trying to, you know, I think that's, I just think it's a little bit different for us.
That is also true about music, Khalil, that we really want to integrate a lot of the spirituality that we experience in the American music. Oh, she was so sorry.
Ooh, yeah,
what you were saying, the religion, almost kind of look. I think music for any artist, but definitely creative to create fictions are dawah. So I'm sorry, can you still hear me?
Yeah, you broke up a little bit, so I moved over to Khalil.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, it's no problem. Do you think that that's the same for music? And even let's even go not just music, but also when it comes to like film as well.
It depends. I think because music has been traversed a little bit more mainstream for a longer period of time, it's a little bit more established, and therefore you have a number of different groups You have the group that don't really actually want to infuse a whole lot of spirituality aspect, in the music, but they're Muslim, and so they might say a few phrases here. And then you have another, group where they're basically naming their music spiritual music or halal music or something, and sometimes, I find we have a problem with extremes on both, in both matters, where we end up trying to kind of please the crowd more than kind of speak from ourselves, when it comes to music, and kind of just speak to our particular what our particular story is. But speaking of what you were saying earlier about why we kind of include the dean in everything, I think for African Americans in general, I think that we don't have, because our culture is fairly new and we're forging a new culture. When we become Muslim, Islam becomes more of our way of life and how we think and how we act than with other people, and therefore, because of that, it reflects in everything we say and do. I mean, to the point where it's almost like we were looking for something to kind of make our own. And sometimes when we find Islam, we do that almost sometimes to a fault, where we kind of make things Islamic that really probably aren't. but
Everyone knows that. Come on.
Yeah, but no, I know for different reasons, but it's true. Yeah, they're totally different reasons, but the same result. But what happens is with us is that we're very, very zealous and fervent and about what we about what we believe. You know what I'm saying? And it's like we're hanging on. It's like it's all we got. You know what I mean? Like other people, they can kind of separate it. Like, for example, we just think about the fact that most people who moved here, who are Muslim, who are not, African Americans, let's say, who moved here, they they came here for a purpose of material gain and that type of thing. So their purpose was different. So they already had kind of worked out this kind of separation, whereas us, a lot of us, even if we are second generation Muslims, we're inheriting basically something where our parents even were like, we left a whole life and a whole lifestyle, and we threw it away, and we said we're going to engage, we're going to immerse ourselves in a whole nother lifestyle, and that's going to reflect in our writing, whether that be music, whether that be literature or anything. It's going to reflect in what we do, because a lot of what we did was throw away what we did have before, and again, sometimes to a fault, because if we were listening to certain teachers who taught us that just being African American was haram, or walking around as black was haram in general, we thought, you know what I'm saying? I'm a product, for example, of as a second generation Muslim, I'm a product of a family where at the end of the day, we had to like take a different course in my childhood, whereas before it was kind of throwing away all of our cultural aspects, including music and everything else, and saying, hey, look, we don't got to throw everything away. You know what I'm saying? We just got to regulate and govern ourselves with Islam. But I think in our literature and our art, I think actually when it's done best, it reflects those conundrums.
Yeah, I think I agree with you. I think that art and art itself, what it represents for African American in general, is a voice. And I think that time and again, it's very, very hard for people outside of the culture to realize how insignificant our voices are to the broader society. How we've been muted in so many ways. Historically, we're muted because you read any history book, and slaves, wasn't so bad for them or anything like that. Socially, we're muted all the time. We are allocated many times to like this kind of almost like minstrel type of categorization. Was like, if you can't sing and dance and throw a ball for me, Blackie, I'm not interested in anything you have to say. Now, what African Americans turned around and did with that was, yeah, I'm going to sing and dance. I'm going to sing about how crappy you are and how crappy everything else is. And I'm going to stand there. When I have that mic, I'm going to tell my story. When you open a book, this is where we get to have control over our narrative. Muslim African Americans have control over their narratives when they write it. And so I think that's a heritage to be very, very proud of. But it's also something that has influenced African American Muslim culture, was this whole idea of using our art and artistry as our voice in ways that maybe other people don't do, because this is really the only way that we're going to get our voices out there. And we've known that for centuries. This is the only way, whether it was singing slave songs in the cotton fields, okay, and master enjoying it, not knowing how subversive it really was, okay, or it's hip hop today, or it's visual artistry today, or it's books, spoken word. It's something that's very, very powerful, and it's just like, this is how we get our voices out. This is how we get our narratives out to everyone. And when you take African American Muslims, the deen is so, like you said, it's so significant and it's so important. And for things to be the only thing that we have, that's the best thing that we could ever have. That's the only thing that we need in terms of really kind of just like, now we're going to have our voice. This is how we're going to express our voices. Black, I'm Muslim, this is who I am, this is what my experience is. And especially I'm looking like in literature, it is so vastly different. The narrative of the African American Muslim is so vastly different and presented differently. I mean, a lot of times, I hate to say it, but there's just this predominant type of writing that's occurring, where it's just like, not only is the deen pushed back, but it's just like, please like me, white man type of writing. I can't call it anything else. Just please like us. You got to understand us, and you got to like us, and everything like that. And African American Muslim writing, any kind of social issues, I think that the most thing it does is the majority of it's about being African American Muslim, speaking to other African American Muslims, and it's a nice form of dawah, but that's not the primary purpose a lot of the time.
I'll speak on that for a second. I think that the reason for that, especially with literature, I feel like is the fact that as a Black Muslim author, particularly an African American Muslim author, now very few, you have some sisters, and I say sisters because I really don't know too many brothers who write, but who write fiction. But I know very few. But I think that very few Muslim authors, African American Muslim authors, have been able to cross over the culture. I think very few have been able to do that. And I can only name is African American authors, like less than 5, who actually have been able to cross cultures and be able to and write for other Muslims, where they actually support and buy their work. And whether that's your desire to do that is your own personal objectives with your career. But I think that the reason why I think that what Black authors do, whether it's, Muslim fiction, urban fiction, African American fiction, whatever it is, I think that our voice and our tone when it comes to writing is very unique, because just like with writing, we do it with writing, we do it with music, we do it with poetry, we do it with instruments, whatever it is, we take a slightly broken form of that and just remix it and make it our own. So when it comes to language, as African Americans, we have our own dialect, we have our own, way that we, communicate with each other that breaks away from that mass audience that we don't necessarily always feel the desire or the need to try to hold, communication on a level that the dominant culture would embrace. So we might have our work voice or our work language, and then we have our at-home language, but when we're talking, we usually communicate as family. So that shows up in our writing, it shows up in our music, that we are talking to our audience. So I feel like it just resonates more with us. We're not necessarily aiming to resonate with the dominant culture, so that's the reason why you're reading works by, maybe some non-Black authors. And I can't speak for them, so I don't know what their goal is as far as communication. But I know when you're talking about like this, aim to please, we're not necessarily writing to try to get you know, others to read our work. Like, we're getting it to be able to relate to each other. Even with my Muslim fiction, when I think about it outside of the Muslim community, you know, I want to be able to reach more African Americans. Then I'm worried about the dominant culture. You know, so for me, it's always about that communication, being able to relate to my people, understand like what it's like to navigate as a Black Muslim. When I first came into writing, and I'm sorry, I'm kind of blabbing on right now, but when I first crossed over to Muslim fiction, that was something that was really important to me, because I was leaving, you know, I was leaving everything that I worked for, everything that all the books that I've written, the style of writing, you know, the fans and everything like that. I had to find a way to appeal. I didn't want to totally lose all of my readers that I already acquired through urban fiction. So, you know, alhamdulillah, when I wrote Dowry Divas, An American Boy, I was able to maintain a lot of readers. I was able to get a lot of non-Muslims who were already familiar with my work and my writing style to still support, to still read, to still come out to like my book launch or book signings. You know, they still read it, and they actually really enjoyed it because they got exposure to something that was different, but still very relatable. I know we'll get more into this later about, you know, when you talk about systems and things of that sort. But I think that desire to still be able to communicate to our people and not totally leave them behind is, you know, helps to create that voice and to maintain that in a way that others may not have.
And I think there's a lot of social value to that, because one unique thing that we have as African American Muslims is that we do have a people to speak to. We do have people in our society to speak to. We've been speaking to them for decades now. And so, like you said, you didn't want to lose that. You didn't want to lose that connection with those readers, but you wanted them to you wanted to introduce them to this new and different, these new and different topics that you wanted to now cover in your writing. And so you were able to do that because of the connection that remains between African American Muslims and the broader African American society. That's something that is not necessarily something that non-NBA Muslims don't have. I think it's something that's foundational, that's substantive in American Muslim culture, because it's the longest and it's the largest. And I'm watching, like, with bated breath all the time, as I see more and more Native American Muslims, more and more Latino American Muslims, more and more Euro-American Muslims, and they're speaking to their different cultures. And I think that's one unique thing that NBA Muslims have that people of immigrant descent don't necessarily have, is that we have a foundational culture to speak, broader culture to speak directly to connect directly with. We're not introducing ourselves. We're teaching them something new about ourselves, but they already know other parts of who we are, and it's familiar. And so it's just like and I think it's reflective in the artistry as well. Do you think so, Khalil?
Yeah, I agree. I agree.
Thank you very much. That's what I want to say all the time. I want to move on to the erasure. I don't want to stay on this too long, because I gotta tell you, I'm getting a vibe off of the whole, just kind of talking about the culture thing. Yeah. But there is this problem with erasure. I just recently read an article by a non-Black Muslim author. I'm going to have to broaden it up a little bit here, because there are non-African American Muslims that are just really kind of like integrated into the African American Muslim culture, like Caribbean Americans and other groups. So it was a non-Black Muslim, and she wrote about diversity in American Muslim fiction. Wasn't a single Black Muslim she not one. I'm like, not one. Are you kidding me? Jawaria just came out with this banging book. Zakia just came out with this book. I'm like waiting to get those books on my carousel. How are you not mentioning these Black authors? And I'm like, well, we need to look up the word diversity or non-white. you know, because especially when you talk about American Muslims, because diversity would mean white in that case, you know, because there's a minority of white American Muslims and their voices need to be heard. So I'm just kind of like, what is the deal with what I've observed, and I could be wrong, and correct me if I'm wrong, as this unreciprocated support where you see the promotion and the support of non-Black Muslim literature in particular, but I think it's across the board. But it's not so with African Americans. It's like, you know, like it's downplayed. You don't see the same amount of support. So when non-Black Muslims, I'm sorry, they fail all, like so many more than they succeed. When they have an opportunity to kind of say how large and vibrant and wonderful, and we have Desis, and we have Arabs, and we have African diaspora, people from Nigeria, we have white Europeans, and we have white European American Muslims, we have all of these Muslims doing all this great work. You always see the same tropey type of work by specifically and Desi artists, and it's infuriating. Because it's like, you should know better. Don't pretend you don't know they don't exist, because you know they exist. So why in the world is this always this consistent failure to just kind of reciprocate some appreciation for the talent that African American Muslims have by their co-religionists? I'm starting with you, Khalil.
Well, I mean, as you talk, you know, it just makes me think about what's transpired in the last just 10 years, and really, you know, it might even be that we're becoming less convenient, honestly, because as the world kind of comes into this division between basically who's going to be about, you know, speaking up for themselves, speaking up for their religious rights and their right to actually believe in what they believe in. African Americans are clearly, even with their literature, at the forefront when it comes to being unapologetic about what we believe in. From the sexuality standpoint, which is a big deal, you know what I'm saying, to even some of the political things that we believe in, that we've been going through for X, Y, and Z. And before, let's be real, their butts weren't on the line. And what they had to, you know, and what they had to protect and what they had to put on the forefront wasn't on the line. They weren't enough, you know, now, because really, the media really is basically saying, you know, when they see, or even out of is synonymous with who they're, you know, saying is terrorists and X, Y, and Z, and who they're putting in the forefront as people who they have to get rid of, then really it's really becoming a matter of, do you really believe in what's right, or are you trying to, or is it more convenient for you to side with those who you believe may protect you more? You know, and if you believe, for example, that by saying or stating certain beliefs or things, you know, or if you believe that this other group who is saying these things that you think might get you in trouble if you associate with it, if you believe that's what's going on, even subconsciously, then it may affect how you include people, you know, what you put to the forefront. And, you know, we don't, you know, African Americans, we've been through this already, so we don't care. We're going to say what we feel and what we think, right?
It's like, but, what they bad to get.
and especially you African American women who are, you know, like I said, I was talking to you earlier about the fact, especially African American women who are, especially hijabi women who are unapologetic about that. But like, look, you know, we're doing this for Allah. We don't need to tell you why we're doing it, X, Y, and Z. And they're like, nah, man, we need to, you know. And I've seen situations where literally, like, you know, Zakir will write something, and there'll be people who will come on and be like, this is not going to further our cause as Muslims, even though it's true. Even though it's true, they're basically saying, look, man, we need to kiss up a little bit more. You're messing our game up a little bit.
But we know that don't work.
Right. We already know a long time ago. We already know that don't work.
Excuse me.
We already know. You know what I'm saying? So
asking us to the table.
So one of the things that I'm starting to think that's going on is that, you know, there's an issue of really, like, it's now, especially in America, it's becoming more convenient to not, you know, to erase that voice, because as far as they're concerned, we're making them look bad because we're not conforming. Matter of fact, we're going the other way.
we're not going to conform. I mean, you know, Camille Rashad said something very, very brilliant during an online discussion, and that is that, you know, for African American Muslims, Islam is liberation. So it is not, it's because it's for so many African American Muslims, Islam is liberation. For so many Native born American Muslims, Islam is liberation. It just is something totally different for us, and it's not like, you know, you're going to make us all of a sudden feel ashamed of it, because we sort this out, and we, you know, and this is what we're teaching our kids, to be proud of it. So it's not like this kind of like accoutrement that I kind of have to get you to not see or kind of accept. If you accept it, you don't accept it, who cares? You know, we're going to still do what we're going to do. So I understand that aspect of it, but I just think that there seems to be, and maybe Zara, you can chime in on this. There just seems to be just a regular aversion to dealing with to supporting Black Muslim artistry. I think a lot of it is that, like you said, Khalil, yeah, a lot of Muslims come into this country and they have very specific agenda, but they also bring some stuff with them. I mean, America is a racist, race-based society. We know that, but it's not the only one, okay? And there's a lot of Muslim countries that are racist and race-based. And when they come over here, they don't try to subvert that from outside their community, to purge it outside their communities. A lot of them adopt the racial code that's in the United States. So they start living in isolated communities. They don't want to be nowhere near Black people, not Black Muslim people or anything like that. All right. Which would be fine if you did not then turn around. I'm going to get a little preachy for a second. If you did not then turn around and ask our Black behinds to support you, to protect you, and all of that, to tell people, oh yeah, no, leave them alone. They all right, they cool, don't worry about it. And then turn around and be like, no, this is what Muslims are. It's like you can't have it both ways. You can't have, I'm not your sister one minute and then not your sister another minute. If I'm your sister, I'm your sister. Why aren't you supporting me? Why aren't you supporting Jawari? Why wasn't Jawari on there? And that's like my biggest question. Like, and the books that they put, and I'm sorry, preaching again, the books that they put were not nearly the standard of African-American Muslim women writers or native-born American Muslim women writers. I'm like, are you kidding? How are you talking about diversity in Islam and Zahra Abdulaziz isn't up there? Are you kidding me? Are you for real? She's one of the best Muslim authors out there, American Muslim authors out there. And you got these trite little teenager YA. Oh my God. It's like, it's like, I have had enough of that. Do I sound like I'm
so the last comment you just made, because I do know that there's like this like real big push on young adult fiction for Muslims. Like that seems like the what gets acknowledgement is young adult fiction. Like everybody doesn't want to write for teenagers, but
it would be one thing, Zara, if it was well written. Okay, I'm so sorry even if I didn't. One of the things that, you know, I'm a literary critic. I could read almost anything. I always look at the execution of work, even if I don't necessarily like the work, or I don't, because the topic just does not speak to me. Okay. Yeah. But I look at the execution of the work. So it's one thing. It's all right if you want to put up the same lame, mundane, tropey, my foreign Muslim parents don't understand me, and I want to smoke and drink and rock and roll. What's the name of that TV show? Like that show on Netflix. It's okay if you want to do that. At least do it well. You're not even doing it well. And then if not only you're not doing it well, but now you got your crew promoting it. Okay. And there's all of this other work that's out there that's fantastic, and it gets no attention. Why? Because there's a black face
breaking up on me a bit.
Okay, sorry, because I think I need to stop preaching. Because there's a black face on it. Y'all knew it was gonna get like this. I told you.
Okay.
That though, it was even more. I'm like,
I don't know what happened.
Hello.
I can hear you.
Can you hear?
Mm-hmm.
Go ahead.
Yeah, it's like on my end.
Zara, you wanted to say something? I think she froze. Khalil, you wanted to say something?
No, I was just saying, speaking to that point, what you said about them coming from other countries and already being entrenched in the, you know, having traveled. It's the story that actually it's worse than people even know. I mean, over there, they expect that you're not articulate. They expect that you're not intelligent. There's also that. So when you actually show skill, you know, and I will say music is actually a good example of this, because music is like, it shows the extreme of how they feel about everything else. You're not African, and again, I'm going to say this more and more, African American women, I think, get it the most. They have the hardest time of all, even more than the men. Because, for example, there have been figures like, say, Muhammad Ali and Malcolm X and people like that who have kind of broken that ice and barrier. But I think that African American women have the hardest because, again, they were taught literally sometimes even in their Islamic teaching that it's like that the African American women are not, you know, that they are second class, primitive, not as good. You understand what I'm saying? And so you're not looking at it, you're not even coming from an equal playing field. You literally have to climb up a deficit, right? And there's not one particular group that will specifically support the African American women. And I'm talking about the ones who are actually showing their Islam, because, like I said, the one group of African American women who might get a little bit more is the people who show a little bit more skin. You know what I mean? So you take that part away, right? And then you have I believe there's a major jealousy issue as well, because when you see the writing of African American women, when they're on it, it's crazy because it's nothing like it, because it's a mix of art and strategy and structure and all of it combined. You're like, God, this is crazy. Like, how are you putting all of this together in this way? And so it's almost like you read it and you're like, man, I don't really want to believe this is true, so I'm gonna ignore it. And that's what's going on. That's what's going on a lot. And that's very similar to some of what happens with whites with our issues with white supremacy. You know, where they know that we're really, really, really good, and so they choose to show representation that's either average or mediocre. In our case, see, they're a little bit more intelligent with how they do it, because they understand. No, we're not gonna not show black representation. We're not going to give them that. We're going to show a certain black representation that we want to show. We're going to control the narrative. Well, a lot of the immigrants just say we're not going to deal with it at all because we don't want to believe it. You know what I'm saying? So, and there's more of that going on than people would like to admit.
Yeah.
Okay, so I want to give my 2 cents on, as far as the original question pertaining to diversity. I think that I just have a different outlook on it, and I know that about this particular view on any day of the week, but I think that my viewpoint is a little bit different as far as you know, a lack of diversity or acknowledging a lack of diversity, as us gaining support from non-Black Muslims. I think that in the ideal world, in the ideal life, in the ideal business, it would matter. But I just don't feel like, personally, I just don't feel like it does, because the Muslim fiction genre is still so new that it's like, I don't care if you're, you know, for American Muslims, I don't care if you are African American or, you know, a Black Muslim or a non-Black Muslim. It's still a relatively new genre for Muslim American authors to actually be able to write about being Muslim and create these Muslim stories. It's still really new. Like it's less, I would say probably less than 20 years or so, you know, really. You know, so it's still a really new genre for people to really be getting into it. Looking at it like under that lens, I look at things from the way that urban fiction, that's my point of reference for Muslim fiction. So when I think about urban fiction and how it developed and how it grew and how it became what it was, I look at that. That's the formula that Muslim fiction needs to, particularly Black Muslims. I feel like the Muslim culture, you know, the Muslim community, Muslims need to look to African Americans to learn how to do things so they can see how we navigated it, and, you know, so that they can dodge, like we already did the blueprint. But I think when it comes to Muslim fiction, we should be looking at what African American fiction did, you know, and duplicate the blueprint. And so what I'm saying is when it comes to diversity, it comes to support, at this point in the stage of development for Black Muslim authors and for Muslim fiction, I don't even see why we're even concerned about, like, there's so much more work to be done just to get the support of our own people, just to get it out there. Like, so many people don't even know these stories and these authors exist. So it's like, you need to, it's almost, you are doing something, whether, you know, you're writing, music, speaking, whatever it is, what do people tell you? I'm sure Khalil can relate or understand this. People will tell you in your city first. Then you worry about branching outside of that. Like, get hot where you are first. Make people first. So I feel like so many people, you know, like I said earlier, some have been able to cross over and get that global or national support on a bigger scale, but I feel like there's so much groundwork to do. Like, we can't even afford to be like, you're looking at like the big scope. Like, why aren't all these people outside of my circle supporting me? Get the support of your circle first. Get them familiar with it first. So I don't really care about diversity or being acknowledged by others. Like, to me, that doesn't mean anything, because I have to get my people fully on board first. Like, let me, you know, get their support, which can be a struggle.
Yeah, but I think that I completely agree. I just think that the thing to be considered at that point, like you said, get hot with your people first. I wrote that down. I'm gonna like put that in bold letters and hang it up on my wall. Who are the people? Because time and time again, there's this facade of brotherhood that non-Black Muslims purport, but do not engender or do not demonstrate. So they'll tell you over and over again, oh, well, Muslim fiction, and like, we're all Muslims and we should be supporting each other, and they don't. So what you're saying is that
when I think about my people, that's not who I'm thinking about.
Okay. So that's what African Americans kind of like consider when they're when they're thinking about that term, my people, who those people are. A lot of the literature.
Here's the thing. This is the problem when whatever venture that you're in, whether it is a business venture, music, you know, writing, any type of, whatever it is that you're doing, you should know your market. You should know your target market. You should know your demographic. You should know who your readers are. You know, whether it's fiction or whether it's the Black Muslim Single Society. If someone asks me, who is your demographic? Who is your target market? Who is your customer? You should know who your customer is. Fighting for that customer to be the larger Muslim community, that's not your customer, and that's okay. You know, now if you are writing for that base and they're not acknowledging you, then to me it's more so you need to figure out acknowledging you. And this is why I feel like only a few Black Muslim authors have been able to cross over. They write and aim to appeal to that audience. Now, if you're writing to your customer or other Black Muslims or African American Muslims, and I don't feel like you can, when they don't acknowledge you, because you aren't really acknowledging them. So, you know, it's almost like I don't want to write for you, but I want you to be down for me. Look at hip hop, right? Hip hop was a reflection to its people first, right? Hip hop focused on getting the voice of the African American people out there, the inner city Black person out there. That's what hip hop represented. And hip hop focused on giving a voice to those people, to educate and inform those people, and to be able to relate to its people. By doing that and by popularizing it amongst its own, people got on board. The people got on board. Now it becomes this global phenomenon. The #1 streamed type of music is hip hop right now, you know, and it's something that is spread, but it didn't spread because hip hop was trying to appeal to a white audience or an Asian audience or anything else. It focused on its own people. So I feel like the diversity is not really our issue right now. Our issue is creating systems and be able to become hot amongst our own, you know, because they'll get on board. Whatever we do, we make hot, period. And what art is, like whatever it is that we do, we determine the culture globally.
Okay.
You know, we have the most appropriated culture, sure, but whatever, whether it's fashion, music, art, Black people determine what's hot. Like specifically, African Americans determine what's hot in this world.
Mm.
But a lot of that like influence when it comes to the media.
I think we lost her, Khalil.
I'm sorry. She broke up. I didn't hear the last thing she said.
I didn't hear her either. She's gonna come back. You wanted to say something?
Yeah, no, I was saying that I'm kind of in the middle of it. I think they don't have to be. I don't think the systems are mutually exclusive to also calling out the issues. And I say that specifically for Muslims. And this is different from Muslims and other people because we do have the issue of people using Islam to justify not supporting. And that's an issue that's not the case in just say regular hip hop or even urban fiction, for example. So the problem is that, like, for example, one of the things that we're fighting, and it's almost like an invisible enemy, is the fact that we're climbing up a battle that even has infected many Black people, and that art is just becoming acceptable in general, you know, acceptable to even even engage in publicly, to celebrate, to support, to put any good amount of money in. You know what I'm saying? Like, what's, you know, fighting, having to fight, for example, to just be accepted as not haram to people, for example, who just became Muslim, affects how people might even like look at it in secret or read it in secret, or even might at the best they'll buy it in secret, but they won't support it. They won't put the amount of money and support that they would, and say, if I didn't feel like in my conscience that something was wrong with what I was doing as I was doing it, I probably would put that much more money. I would advertise it X, Y, and Z, like I do all these other stuff that's non-Muslim stuff. You know what I'm saying? But when it comes to Islamic stuff, and this is very Muslim specific, and why I almost feel like the reason why you do kind of have to continue to call out the racism in it, is because we're also having to convince our own people who are still coming out of the fog of being of the fact that they thought they had to be taught by people overseas. That we have to call out the racism of it, because they have to know, look, this is what's going on behind closed doors. It's not a problem with fiction. It's not a problem with music. It's a problem when it's your fiction. It's a problem when it's your music. They have a problem with you as a Muslim, and the more you actually are unapologetically Muslim. See, if you act like kuffar, the Muslims will leave you alone. But the more you actually act like and stay Muslim and still espouse Muslim principles in your work, the less you get supported. And this is a very unique issue that we have, right? And so because of that, I think that we do have to still, like when people say, you know, it's okay to say, you know what, they're not including this because there's something nefarious about it. It's not just on accident, and it does affect our people, because our people are still being taught largely by people who don't look like us, right? Many of us are anyway, right? And then the other extreme you have is the people who've decided to totally reject anybody who don't look like us, and everything is just black, 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 wrong or right. You know what I'm saying? And that also is its own issue, because, you know what I'm saying, it, you know, leads to people to believe that art transcends Islam. And I've seen that too. So, you know what I'm saying? So, you know, to where, okay, you know what, if it's, as long as it's black, you know, and a Muslim did, or even somebody who's non-Muslim, but is black, and we say it's conscious, we can do things that go against, basic principles we know are right and wrong in Islam. And that waters down our Islam. And that's even more dangerous than the other thing, to be quite honest. Because who cares about all of this if you lose your soul in the process, right? So I would say, to speak to both points, it is absolutely important.
Okay.
Let me.
I agree.
I just want. Let me just. I got like 2.
You just
so
froze.
Just to finish up, it's absolutely important to create the systems. That's the most. As a matter of fact, it's more important to focus on yourself and create the systems. They're not equal. They're definitely not equal. I would say like 80-20, focus on yourself and create the systems. But we also have to realize that we still live in a connected world, you know, and everything that everybody else does, we do affect each other. And therefore, we do need to call out these things, because even though on the surface it may look like just some random people calling us out and they don't affect us, but it actually does affect us, because we're still climbing out of, we're still as African-American Muslims, still learning and understanding that we can lead ourselves without the help of other people.
Yes. And that terrifies people. That terrifies people, because as soon as an African-American realizes that they have autonomy and power, that scares everybody and their mama.
Absolutely. Yep.
Because of the power that comes with it. So I think that the systems are very, very important. And I think that there needs to, like I said before, there needs to be almost like a paradigm shift in what we are considering, how we prioritize that word and allocate it when we're talking about every aspect of our life, including our artistry. You know, because quite honestly, there are a lot of great African-American Muslim designers and artists that get a lot more props from culture than they get from co-religions. And I think some of it is exactly what you said, Khalil. It's like, I have a problem with you. Necessarily have a problem with the stuff. It's because it's yours, because it has that black face on it. So some of it is just like a regular allergy, but some of it is an attempt that, like Sherman Jackson calls, like this hegemony that exists, where it's like you're not bona fide because you're not from overseas, and you're just a regular black person, and so your Islam is just a regular black Islam, and mine is superior to you. Which is ironic, considering the fact that so many non-black Muslims come over here and find, because of the foundations that African Americans have established. And it's like, come on, you worried about someone snatching off your kimar, you wouldn't even be able to wear a kimar at all if it wasn't for sisters that was like walking out there in the first place. So I think the systems are very, very important, but I think we need to kind of like think, when I'm talking about my artistry, when I'm talking about the music or the film I'm producing or the literature that I'm producing, who is my target and who am I going to look to create these support systems with? And it may be small, but at least it'll be ours. And the thing is, like, even if it's small, it's probably you're gonna get more exposure than you would if you keep on chasing after a bunch of people that don't want to deal with you until it's like a matter of optics, when it looks good for them to deal. Yeah, you know, and I'm not racist. You see, there's my black pet right there. Now go in the back, because I got this mediocrity right here that I have to promote. So it's like, I think it's very, very important that we kind of think about that. You know, and it's going to scare some people, and it's going to scare some of us. Like, what? We can't include the Desi and the Arabs? No, it's not that we can't include them. They done put us out. They got us out, okay? African-American musical artists, filmmakers, poets, designers, visual artists, and authors. I'm putting you on notice. They done put your black behinds out that tent. So we need to go and create our own tent, and then try our best to make sure that that does not happen again, because somebody tries to sell us a bill of goods about being our brother and our sister, and then treat us like garbage later on. Sorry, I got preachy again. So what are some suggestions for these systems? Like, where do we start? Where can we start?
Okay. So I'm sure Khalil probably has a lot of experience with this and a lot to add to this. But I just want to touch on something really quickly before I talk about some things that I think need to be done. I think that it's really important. Like I said, I know I can go toe-to-toe with this as far as expectations, but I think that we have to really lower our expectations of non-Black Muslims. I think that our expectations are too high. And that, you know, it's almost like, what do you, how much do we really expect them to know? They're not integrated into our communities, right? They're not. Just like, I don't know very much. Layla, you ask me about people and this and that all the time, and I was like, girl, I don't know who that is. Like, I don't, you know, it's just not, I'm not in those circles. I'm not in that community. You were like, you don't know who authors are? I don't know. Look, I don't know who that is. So, you know, it's like, integrated into their community, or they're not integrated into ours, because how much acknowledgement do we really expect? They don't know. Like, to some extent, you know, and so when we call people out, no, don't get me wrong. I'm not, before you frown up your face, Khalil, I know they know.
Khalil's like, move it off to the side. Come back to the middle, brother. It's all right. You say.
No, I know that they don't take that, but what I mean is, like,
he's like, she went there with that. I gotta get over.
I'm not saying that they're totally oblivious, but I'm saying that there's not enough interaction. Like, honestly, there's not. There's not enough interaction.
I'm sorry. I don't have, the reason I say that is I'm not even speaking about that part. I'm speaking about people like, for example, like I said, I've been helping when I was a kid with her stuff for the last couple of years. I'm talking about people who will be like, come on, they know who you are, and then they treat you like second class. I'm talking, I'm not talking about people who don't know.
Right. No, I get what you're saying. And I agree. Like, if they know who you are, it's different. But I mean, look, the truth is, when we do stuff, we look to aim and to uplift our own too. So that's why I don't get that mad at it. That's why I'm always just like, look, because guess what?
I don't think
don't shake your face, because
I don't think we do
if I put together. I
don't get that mad either. I'm shaking my face and I don't get that mad either. I don't care. Like,
yeah. Like, I don't get that mad, because, like, guess what? If I put together an event, an award ceremony, whatever, I'm looking at my circle too. I'm looking at my network too. Like, so I don't get mad at that type of stuff. You know, that's like, Oscar's so white. Like, let it keep being white. I don't care. Like, it doesn't matter to me, to get that acknowledgement. But I think that the problem is, and I'm gonna be honest with you, I think the problem for a lot of Black Muslims, I feel like, not everyone, but I feel like part of it is the calling out, part of the desire for acknowledgement is some of it is jealousy, right? And people might not like me saying that, but I feel like some of it is jealousy. I feel like there's a lot of jealousy, as far as we're jealous of their money, jealous of their resources, and jealous of their ability to work together. So, because guess what? If we had it together, if we were back like the nation was back then, we wouldn't be worried. We could care less. We don't care about groups who we feel like don't have anything over us. It's when we're in that rat race, and then we're like, oh, like, you're passing us, and now you all the way to the front, and we're still back here. That's when it's just like, well, hold on a second. How did you get there? And you're not going to acknowledge my last place. It's like we didn't. It's like it's the jealousy of it, right? Systems, right? So as far as systems, right? I feel like they're
have to come back just a little bit.
I'm just
saying that I am mad, and this is the reason why I'm mad, not out of jealousy. Okay, because I'm looking at it in terms of what we're producing. Okay, what the culture itself is producing, and this is the reason why I get mad. It's because there is this vibrant production from all these different backgrounds and everything like that, but we don't get the recognition, and we're stupid enough to keep on going there and expecting to get. I'm sorry, I just feel like so frustrated, because, like you mentioned urban fiction. Okay, there's a thing called the African American literary tradition. Okay, right. And one of the things I presented is that African American Muslim literature is very much a part of that tradition, and so there's things that we can learn, okay, right, from our tradition, our heritage as African American authors, on how to establish, like you said, these systems and everything like that. But there's this constant thing that is getting in our way, and it's this need to feel like if we are not in the tent with people that don't want us there, we're not good Muslims somehow. We're not being supportive Muslims somehow. And I just wish that we would just, enough as it was, would just be like, you know what, it's okay. And if it's small, it's fine. Hip hop was very, very small and minuscule. It started in a city. Okay. Right. Now it's global, you know? So it's just like Toni Morrison. Okay. She was harshly criticized and everything like that. You know what African-American authors went through? Black authors, period, went through. It's like, you know, why aren't we following in those traditions that we know we have the archetypes? We have the archetypes. Right. Why aren't we appreciating those archetypes and then saying, look, this is Black Muslim fiction. This is African American Muslim fiction. This festival is for this specific subgenre, right, because y'all not showing us the love. Okay.
The problem with that though is that when we do that, let's be real, 10 people come.
But that's okay, because guess what? I'd rather 10 people come.
It's not okay from a
but if you dedicate all your life to art and you got to run a business, it's not okay.
No, I understand that, but, but the thing is like, that's the way it always starts, though. It's always 10 people coming. But I think that one of the things that Muslims, the African American Muslims, the mistake that African American Muslims making, are they looking at those larger tents. But even if you go in that larger tent, would you even get 10 people looking at your stuff? So you can have 10,000 people and 10 people look at your stuff. Or you can create something on your own and have 10 people look at your stuff. And then it's 20 people, then it's more. And then all of a sudden, the broader culture, you're like people, they're like, oh, wait a minute, what's going on? Who's this person? Who's that person? That's how you build it.
I don't think that we have to be like all black. I'm gonna be honest, like, you know, I was just talking earlier, but I'm about to switch up now.
He's black centric.
I still don't think. Here's what I think. I still do not think we have to say, okay, we're just going to do African American literature. We just make it. We just lead it. We just lead I think if we just lead ourselves, the world will follow. That's how it really works. I mean, even now, I'm gonna be honest, like let's take hip hop. Conscious hip hop music is support. 80% of it is supported by it ain't white, it ain't black people buying them albums. I'm gonna be honest. We might create the business, but we are still, even from a black people point, let's take Muslim out of it, we are still in infant stages when it comes to learning how to not fight each other. Mm-hmm. We're still getting out of that, and because people are like I'm in my 30s or whatever, like I'm gonna be honest, we don't have, if you're a business person, you don't have time to wait. So you got to do what you got to do. You know what I'm saying? And I think confidence is a big deal too. You know what I'm saying? Like the bottom line is what Allah has given us as African Americans, as you all spoke about before, is our unique voice, and how that unique voice is universal. Mm-hmm. We can't make the same, like, just because they say they may relegate it to just Daisy, or they may relegate it to if we make that same mistake, I believe we will continue to fail. I believe it. And I think that when you even look at the black people who started to transcend in almost every instance, they were both unapologetically black, but they also had a large following of people who were not black, because that's our gift. And ironically, it's like Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knew that we would have this Achilles heel. And so he gave us this gift to compensate for it. Let's not throw that away too. So what I'm saying is, I'm saying it's almost like when we say, oh, I'm just going to make this African American. I'm not saying don't cater it towards African Americans, but it's almost when you name it that, you limit your business.
Well, see, I kind of disagree with that, right? Because check this out. Single society, right? And it's kind of the get down or lay down approach, right? So I don't exclude people. And I changed the title, right? So you guys know originally it was Zara J matchmaking, but I wanted to remove myself from the forefront. But I didn't want it to make it just Muslim single society and that, because it was aimed to reach a particular demographic. It was aimed to reach a group who struggle with marriage, for one, struggle with finding mates too, and then also a group that when you go onto these half your deen or Muslima or single Muslim, you go to these websites and the African American or the Black Muslim presence isn't there. You know, so it's not targeted. Hold on, let me explain. It's not those opportunities just aren't marketed to us. They're not targeted to us, and they're not really built to produce good quality results for us. So with that, so I took entitled the Black Muslim Single Society. So look, this is for us, by us. Now, do white Muslims contact me to join? Sure. Do Indian Muslims contact me to join? Sure. I'm not going to exclude you. People come to me all the time and they're like, well, I'm not black, but I'm cool with marrying a black woman, or I'm cool with marrying a black man. Can I join? And I'll tell them, look, you can get down with us. You know what I'm saying? You want to get down, you can get down with the team, but I'm letting you know that when it comes to matching, I'm not going out of my way to try to find you an Indian or a Caucasian or whatever else like that. This is who you're going to get matched with. This is who we target. This is who we aim to please. Now, if you want to get down, you can get down with the team. You can't bring the potato salad, but you can bring, you know, some chips or some soda to the cookout. But, but you know, I'm just letting you know this is for. So don't come to me upset that you don't feel like you're being represented enough.
But I think,
you know, so and most of them they're like, okay, cool. So it's the same thing when it comes to the art. Say that again.
No, you were saying, no, go ahead. You said the same thing comes to art. Go ahead. Before I say anything.
Yeah, so I feel like when it comes to art, you know, you can create opportunities, you can create networks, you can create systems that target and aim for give a voice to a for us, by us type of approach to music and artistry. Because no matter what, like I said earlier, we dictate culture anyway. We dictate it anyway. They're going to get down. They're going to get down. I think that the biggest problem with us is the fact that we don't produce with good enough quality, enough consistency, and that we don't leverage each other's networks. So we still, when it comes to art and when it comes to any type of art form, whatever it is, whether it's literature, music, whatever, I feel like we still take a very type of approach to stuff. And we don't leverage each other's networks. So, like, for example, I wanted to put together a artist tour last year. I wanted to have, you know, 4 to 5 different Muslim authors, you know, come together. Let's do like a panel, a book talk, and a book signing on, you know, talk about our books, talk about Muslim fiction, talk about points, because I feel like there's a lack of awareness out there. Like, we can get out there and keep promoting, but people don't know that these books exist. People don't know who the authors are. People don't know where to get the stuff from. I feel like there's a lack of awareness. So you can't just try to do like book signing. You out and promote your book. I feel like you also have to bring awareness of why we need these stories, why people need to come together. When you stand together and you collaborate and you're doing these events as a group, you're standing like, look at this representation. It's not just this author, that author. No, like, we're together. When urban fiction, they used to do a lot of book signings together, books and do stuff together. So that, because there's power in numbers, there's representation in numbers, but we try to do things in a very individualized way, so that, you know, doing a signing, this author is doing an event, and you don't see that collective body. You don't see that, oh, this is an actual thing. There are actually Black Muslim authors out here. There's actually Muslim books out here. There's actually different. You don't see that. There aren't any bookstores. There aren't any conferences. There aren't any events. There aren't any media platforms. You know, we have NBA Muslims, you know, but like, other than that, what other like go-to website? Okay, you know, Black Muslim fiction or Muslim fiction or some go-to platform where we know can be represented in numbers. You don't see that. So, but, you know, back to the point. So when I put it out there that I wanted to put together this thing, I didn't get any responses.
Wow.
I didn't get any responses. No authors wanted to do it. And I wasn't asking for any type of, I said, you know, I asked for put up a small donation to provide to everybody collectively in order to pay for promotional materials. But as far as you are in charge of your own travel, you're in charge of your own, you know, promotion and book signings. Like, it wasn't, you know, it's like, it wasn't anything to make money. There was absolutely no money, profit in it for me at all, other than the fact that we come together because I understand that there's strength in numbers, and that when you have these opportunities, okay, we can do a book talk by ourselves, or we can bring 4 or 5 different authors together, everybody promote, everybody work on bringing out. Instead of that 10 people you mentioned, now you have 50 people to come together. Okay, now we have a nice base. We can make some money. We can do it together. But when everyone's trying to take a very individualized approach to marketing and to promotion, you're only going to get but so far, I feel like. That's why even with Black Muslim Single Society, with the single socials, that's why I always have been doing them for the past year this way. I started planning the 2018 events, trying to figure out, okay, what's the budget that's going to be for it? Why we always want to book a Black Muslim performer, you know, because now we're giving, it's not just for our sake for the events, but it's also to give that performer, that artist, an opportunity to market to their audience, you know, opportunity to perform, an opportunity to collaborate. So I feel like these collaborations, coming together more. You know, like, you know, you guys did an event with Naima, who does events out there. You know, you guys did an event with Shadid. I feel like there's opportunities to collaborate. You have to collaborate and come together more and leverage each other's network.
I mean,
and I don't feel like I see that enough.
But I mean, and again, those are two different things. When we first started talking about the calling it black versus not calling it black, which was all I was saying. I mean, all the networking stuff is you know, of course you should do that. But the only thing I can say is that I've seen that in waves. Like I see it coming, I see it go, and I see it coming, I see it go. And the reason why I think it's apples and oranges to say even the singles thing, which is more of a it's more of an objective business and a subjective business. Art is a very subjective business. And really, when you really think about how art actually really gets disseminated, especially in the West, it's funded. It's not just you can collaborate all you want, but if you don't have funders, and I'm talking about big money funders,
Right.
it doesn't go but so far. Even like, you know,
Right.
let's take even some of the hip hop movements. I mean, they got big when somebody saw what they were doing, and then they took it and they expanded it by putting their money behind it. Master P, when he's in South, okay, you know, he gets a personal injury.
See, that brings
Huh?
That kind of brings another question, because of course there's always like this patronizing aspect when it comes to art. I had mentioned before that there were a lot better in William Shakespeare's time. You know, he was very base and vulgar compared to his contemporaries. But you know, why are high schoolers still forced to read Shakespeare instead of watch it, but to read William Shakespeare, because he had the patronage and he had the people that wanted to make sure that his work was on a continuum. There's some colonization, social colonization, but I'm not going to get into that. So I understand that, okay. But then the question comes to mind, okay, the people that, if African American Muslim artists are placing themselves where they are consistently erased and in favor of non-Black Muslim artists, or even African diaspora Muslim artists, where are you going to get those benefactors from anyway? So, like, say, for example, like someone that's an African American Muslim artist it does what you said. We don't put the Black on it. Okay. And then what happens? We get overrun, we get overshadowed, and the money doesn't come to us anyway. If we can't I think it's very, very important to make a distinction, to make ourselves, to highlight that uniqueness, to bring attention to it, because the other way is not working.
Well, I mean, it depends. You know what I'm saying? Because sometimes, every once in a while, you will have, like, a lot of times when you see success stories, what you don't see is that somebody came from behind, came under that person and said, hey, you know what, I'm going to give you this. It might, and oftentimes it's not a person of the same race or ethnicity or background. You don't hear about it because that's not what they're in it for. They're in it just to kind of give it and keep going. You know, even me, I've had opportunities like that before. You know what I'm saying? Not that I've always taken because of other things. But what I'm saying is that what I think is unintelligent. I think that confident Black Muslims can lead themselves without having to exclude. Like, and I always look at the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. You know, I always do, because I feel like, listen, look, Islam is a big, like the more we put our confidence, or put our hope in the fact that Allah is going to give us what we work for, right? That it's going to come how it comes. So what I don't like to do is I don't like to limit myself, right? Or I think sometimes the way that Allah might want to bring it to you is a way that you might not want. And we got to also remember the soul part of this in this journey. And the soul part of this journey is that oftentimes Allah humbles us by bringing us support from places and directions that we never thought, or even our pride might resist, because of what's happened before, right? And so I think the great opportunity that we have as African American Muslims, and especially as artists, is that we don't have the cultural baggage, and we're at a critical juncture right now. We can lead, but we also have the opportunity to do exactly what they did to us, or to do it the right way, regardless of what they do, right? And when I say that, I mean absolutely, and absolutely, unequivocally support your own first, right? But don't close yourself off because they closed themselves off.
But having something that highlights a Black Muslim, African American Muslim artistry, why is that automatically considered exclusive?
I didn't say that. I didn't say that. I didn't. If you,
okay,
I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that. I'm saying how we name it. I'm actually saying how you actually name it can matter. I'm saying when it comes, and this is specific to art. I will say this. This is very specific to art, because when I look at the history of art, art has always been, and we haven't really talked about the appropriation thing, but it's a very delicate subject because art has always been shared. It's been taken from, so one group takes from another group. We take a little bit from this, from that.
It's been stolen. The difference is stolen.
No, listen. I'm saying I'm not.
It's been all both. It's been both.
I'm saying it's been borrowed. It's been like I was talking to you Zara, the other day. Like, when people don't know, like, the problem. I don't care whether you take my art and imitate it. I don't care, because that's been happening since the beginning of mankind. Honestly, it's been happening since the beginning of mankind. So us to act like I own it, and like let's take reggae. We take reggae, for example. Reggae is huge in, say, UK and Europe and some places in Europe. In Germany, for example, you'll see white dudes with plaits in their hair and stuff like that. And they'll do reggae, they'll sing it, and all of a sudden they'll sound just like the other dudes. But the difference is they won't take credit for it. The difference in this place is that when a lot of times when Black artists appropriate it, and when you go over after a certain amount of years, then all of a sudden it's like the people who actually did it in the beginning don't exist anymore, and they don't get the opportunities to represent it anymore. So Justin Timberlake can come out with a song, with an album that sounds real soulful in 2000s, X, Y, and Z, and everybody be like, this is great. But they only allow Lil Yachty to represent hip hop and soul. You know what? When it comes to his representation, they ain't gonna give no Black people, soulful people money in 2017, because Timberlake and Adele got that now, and that's and that's really, what's happening.
We don't need you anymore.
Right. I don't care. Like, we're going to copy each other. Right. But it's when you actually then try to, and then you stop the opportunities of the people who actually have done it historically better and first and all of that. And so, and what I'm saying is, the more you try to control in this, what I find, the more you try to control in this stuff, the more you actually get in trouble. And I say, do the work.
Now,
be consistent. Huh? I'm saying, do the work, be consistent, because there's a lot of people who, for example, like there's a lot of, like, I know I've been doing this for X, Y, and Z for X amount of time. I've seen so many people who they do one album or two albums, then they drop off the map because they didn't feel like they got the support.
Right.
And I find this a lot amongst us. And really, but when you really think about it, even people who are mainstream who made it, you don't know the 10, 15 years that they were struggling before that.
Yeah, they always say a bestseller took 10 years.
Right.
So, yeah, I mean, I agree with you, because even for myself, like, after my first couple Muslim fiction novels, I had to take a break for different reasons, because I just had to regroup. So I agree with you as far as the consistency, and that's why I give, like, Zakiya, like, so much respect.
I don't know what that woman is.
She putting out a book every day, and so I can't write 300 books a year.
I don't know. I want Khalil, next time you talk to her, tell her to mail me whatever it is, whatever coffee or tea she's drinking.
She has something special there.
You know what she says, though? She says it's not about being motivated; it's about being active. I always remember this quote that she had.
Right. Everybody talking about I agree with that. It's about what you show up even when you don't feel like doing it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I definitely did the consistency, and I agree with you as far as being exclusive when it comes to art. I do agree with that. Like, you can do different things and not necessarily say, like, this is for Black Muslims when it comes to art. I definitely agree with that. Completely. I don't really have any disagreement with that when it comes to art, and still be able to lead and represent the culture and be strong without having to be exclusive in art, and how that's different than maybe in some other businesses and things of that sort. I agree with you on that. and I think that it can be done. I think, but like I said, I feel like able to leverage each other is really important, you know, because you have sites like muslimgirl.com and things that sort of just kind of just like blow up out of the blue. You're like, where did this come from? You know, like, and maybe it's not out the blue, maybe it's out the blue to us, you know, I don't know. But when you're just like, wow, like this, like, you know, this out of nowhere, like this website, it's just like, it's everywhere. Like everyone's giving it all attention, MTV and everything like that. It's just like where did this even come from? You know, but then like the representation, what'd you say?
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
What did you say?
I have a whole lot to say about that. So let's go.
I know you do. I know you do. But you know, even when you look at like some of the bigger like Muslim media platforms, they don't necessarily acknowledge to the arts like that. Period. And if they do, it's definitely not Black Muslims. But then you can also look at outlets like, and I could be wrong. I could be completely wrong about this. And if I am wrong, I apologize in advance. But like even platforms like Aziza Magazine, I don't feel like gives enough respect or attention to Muslim artists. You know, I feel like in the Muslim community, period, and especially Black Muslims definitely get the heat of this. But there's definitely like the respect, like who gets respect in the Muslim community. Oh. You know, like what what groups get respect, what careers you have to be in, what degrees you have to have, what circles you have to be a part of. And artists typically are just frowned upon and looked down. You know, where I could write a 250-page novel that I took time to craft, that's creative, that's well written, and that's well put together, well marketed. And you can come behind me with your 75-page book that you've written, but because you are in a certain circle and you have certain accolades, that now your book gets 10 times more respect than all the effort that I put into my book. You know, like I'm not held. And that's why even, you know, I backed away from vending. And that's just part of the reason, I'm being honest with you, this is part of the reason why I'm writing for an event. Because I was like, I'm not vending at your event. And it sounded really bougie, right? It sounds bougie, but it's not. I was just like, you know, I was getting asked to like, you know, vend at different events and things of that sort. You know, and I'm like, your event. I'm sorry, I'm an author. I've been on Amazon bestsellers list several times. I've written several books. I put money into this. I'm not going to be next to the person that sells shea butter. No, I'm not. Like, if you want me to come speak at your event, if you want me to be a feature at your event, to headline at your event, then I'll do that. But you're not going to put me next to the girl that sells hijab pins. And no offense to that, but what I'm saying is these are two totally different things, you know? And it's like, no, I'm not doing it. So if you're not going to put some respect on my craft, no, I'm just saying, like, if you're not going to put some respect on my craft, pull back some until you guys are ready to, because I didn't bust my butt for the past few months to create this product to be treated as if like, oh, you know, that's cute, you know? No, you know. No. And I feel like artists don't generally get that respect.
And that's the part. That's the part of it. That's the part of it where I say, like, and this is where I feel like I said and this is where I say even from African American Muslim women who wear hijab is worse than anybody. That part right there, because you've also had to fight for just literally having your voice, being able to speak at events. You literally had to just fight to have a voice, you know, let alone, you know, being able to have product that people actually take seriously. You know what I'm saying? Because I tell you what, as an African American man who does music, for example, they are, you know, they have that same kind of mentality. Oh, that's just the entertainment. You know what I'm saying? So let's throw him here. Let's do this. Let's throw this person here and do that. And they serve this function. And I'm telling you, this part of where Muslims are is one of the main reasons why we have the self-esteem issues that we have, where we have the identity issues that we have. We don't realize all we got to do is look out. All you got to do is look on social media and look at what people attach themselves to. And you'll realize that the way people derive their identity is through art. And because we have refused to accept that, and we want to force feed people away from their fitra, and okay, everybody has to derive their identity through let's be honest, these dry characters who are trying to teach us Islam, and it's great for Islamic teaching, right? It's great for that, right? But that's for us to take and then apply to our lives. When it comes to actually just living and getting and having role models on how to live, we want to look at the cool. We're looking for the cool people. You know what I'm saying?
I have to tell you something. I have to tell you something. Just from the other side of it, okay, and the work that I've been doing at NBA Muslims, all right, something that is very, very key, but is sorely lacking among I'm calling African American Muslim artists across the board out, is that even when you have a platform that is saying, listen, I want to know about you, very few respond. So it's just like, honestly, when you know, I'm like, listen, this is a platform for you. I want to know about you. Can you respond? How many have a media packet that they could just send? How many are willing to take the time to have a telephone conversation? Okay, so that I can put something out there. Okay, and then how many are ready to take that link and then share that link? Okay, and encourage other people to share it. I mean, quite honestly, like that is a big thing. You know, if you're griping about not getting enough coverage, you know, how about supporting some of the platforms that are made specifically for you and helping those to grow? You know, it's like, it's like you know how many artists I've reached whatsoever from those artists, and I try to make it as easy as I possibly can. If you want the questions, I'll see the questions. You want to call, send a call. I'll Google Hangout, Skype, whatever you want to do, Facebook, whatever it is you want to do. And I'm even like, just give me, I have 2 questions. Can you just answer just these 2 questions? And it's just like, no, there's nothing. It's not there. It's not out there. You don't get a response. Okay, I've been trying my darndest to build this up, and it's like I can't get it built up because the very artistry that I'm trying to highlight is like they don't know how to. And maybe people who've been in the industry in the different spheres can kind of like mentor and teach them how to. That's why when I saw that Umzaki was mentoring, I was like, alhamdulillah. So many people need to sign on for that, because it's just like, even like with my specialty, which is Muslim fiction, it's like, listen, you need a media pack, you need a more decent picture to present. You got to have all of that stuff ready, okay? But a lot of them don't have all of that stuff ready, and it's just like, if you have that ready, then you can send it out, and then you can get more coverage that way as well. So some of it is our fault as well. I mean, I'm not saying it's like so multi-layered, but I'm just saying from my side, you know, it's been a struggle, you know, to kind of just get people to kind of say, you know, yeah, I'll answer those questions for you.
Yeah, well, I mean, and it's, you know, and it's because we don't have an industry like gospel, or like you said, even urban fiction. We don't have like an industry with standards and that type of thing. I mean, it's literally what, you know, I think we are on this call for right now. It's definitely one of my goals. It's definitely one of Umzakia's goals. But like, even doing that, for example, like Umzakia has the mentoring thing. The majority of it, so many people have responded. Like but the vast majority of people have wanted it for free, you know. And so again, it goes back to wanting it for free. So again, it goes back to, and we're the only people, by the way, who think that we're supposed to get this learning stuff.
No, we're not the only people.
I'm saying
we're not the only people.
I'm saying between Black and Muslim. Let's be free. I'm but Black and Muslim.
I think it's more so in the Muslim community than it is in the Black community, honestly, because it's definitely a Muslim thing where everything is just supposed to be done for free. Everything's supposed to be. I remember when I first started Black Muslim Single Society, how much heat I caught charging for the network. And originally we kept it open for maybe about the first like 8 months. It was a free base for free just to get in. When we tell people it's a paying service, you have to pay for it. It was like, you're gonna charge me to help me find
stuff for a lot.
Dare you try to keep a roof over your head? Like, I'm like, listen, you want me to invest in spending time on doing something that you don't feel like doing? other people in your social circle don't feel like doing.
But I also think that there's this misconception that artistry is exclusively intuitive. And so it's just like you have this innate talent and you're able to execute that talent.
Right.
And that's simply not the case. Okay. I have a very brilliant daughter who's a very brilliant artist, gets it from her father, not me. And I've had to encourage her to go and study art. You need to go and you need to study art, and you need people to tell you that your stuff is crap and how to make it better. And time and time again, when I read a lot of Muslim fiction across the board, not just African American Muslim fiction, I'm like, oh my God, take a class, because you think that telling a story is the same as writing a book. It's not the same thing. I'm an excellent writer. Okay. I know that I can write very, very well. Can I do what Zara does? Not until someone teaches me how to do it, because I'm not an author. She's an author. It's just like, and know what your weaknesses are as an artist, and then go and pay the money to hone that skill and make that skill better. And it just seems like this idea that it's all innate and it's all just going to come to you and everyone's going to love it. You know, just because you can sing in the shower doesn't make you a singer. Okay, just because you tell a nice story to your kids, that doesn't make you a children's book author. Okay, just because you can draw an apple, it doesn't make you Vincent van Gogh. You know, there's a lot that goes through the process of becoming an artist, and it's not some of it is very much raw, innate talent that Allah blesses you with. Okay, but you have to take that talent, you have to hone it into something that is that is excellent. You should be striving for excellence. It's like when I saw that she was mentoring, I automatically knew that she'd be charging for it. What do you think? She's not supposed to eat. She's been progressing as an author. She's a master. This is a master class. You get mentoring for a master. You don't want the master to eat anything. It's like,
I think that some of that also just has to do with there's this familiarity that we have with each other. You know, so it's almost like I see you at the master. Why would I pay you $200 for that? You know, so. It's this sense, because I'm gonna be honest with you. Like, for example, if you look at Black Muslim Single Society, probably about 95% of the members are not on my personal social media, right? Social media are not the ones who support the network. They might talk about it, but they're not the ones who financially. It's the ones who are doing Google searches. It's the ones who follow probably other media, our actual fan pages, our actual business pages that don't have access to me. But when people look at it like me, and that's why I changed it from Zara J matchmaking to the Black Muslim Single Society, was because it becomes this familiarity where people feel like it's about you. It is. People feel just so familiar with you. They don't feel like you're too touchable almost, you know, so people don't feel like, you know, well, why should I have to financially support you? Or people have this idea of money, you know, oh, well, you writing books.
Oh, God.
You doing speaking. You don't need
to write the books for the money. Authors do not write books for money.
It's almost like they have this mindset that you know, you're doing things on a different level than they are, so you don't need it.
Yes.
So I'm going to have to wrap up. We've been on here for almost 2 hours. I would love to continue the discussion, but I want to hold the viewers on. But I think it's very important. I think that, you know, like you said, we need to leverage each other's networks. We need to support each other. We need to know what's going on out there with each other. I definitely would love to have a thing where people actually told me, like, a lot of times you're saying you don't know. Like, a lot of times you're like, oh, have you heard of this person? No, I haven't heard of that person. I haven't heard of that person. I definitely think that we need to have like a platform where we're like, each other's cheerleaders, was just like, look at the great work that they're doing. And it's like the Korma. I'm so bad at names. The poet.
Yusuf,
oh my God.
Yeah.
Yusuf Korma. Yeah. Oh my God. You just told me about him last week, and I'm like, oh, this is amazing. Why I didn't know about that? Oh my God. So I think it's like, you know, and even like that sister that she did the image that went viral with the black woman in the t-shirt with the afro with all the names of the people slain by police, and someone chopped off her name. Yeah. Like, that's like, you know, I want to know that these artists are out there and stuff. So we may not have to call it black. All right. Okay, but we definitely need a platform. We definitely need
so I'll tell you something. What I'm gonna tell you what I've been creating. I've been working on a website, right, called MuslimCreators.com, right? And it doesn't have right now. It just have, for example, the movie stuff on it. If you look at it now, but under the hood was a platform to basically showcase Muslim artists and authors, right? And that's all it is, and it does, right? But the reason I haven't released it is because I need somebody on the back end who is not trying to be an artist to run the actual content and to help with the promotion of it, because what it would do is basically I want something to catalog artists so people can go, if I want to find, for example, a Muslim artist, a black Muslim artist, or non-black Muslim artist for that matter, you know, we can categorize it in a certain way, you know, by genre, categorize it by content, that type of thing. Working on this thing for actually the concept for years, right? But what the hardest thing and me and Zara have had this conversation actually, the hardest thing to find is when I find people who want to work with it, they want to actually do the art too. And I find that to be a conflict of interest. I don't want to run it myself because I'm an artist. I don't want to, you know, I want it to be a little bit more objective than that. You know what I'm saying? But what happens is, and this is mainly, you know, I have really mainly tried to find black people to help with the thing, right? And so what happens is after a while, they're like, yeah, well, I want to, you know, I'm going to do the art and this at the same time. And then it goes for a little while, they do a little bit of work, and then it falls off, right? And then the skill level isn't there also to keep it up. So, you know, I'm going to tell you what, you know, this is, the collaboration mission has been something that I've tried to do for a while. People like Yusuf, and like, for example, when I do music and I know artists who I think are dope, I put them on my albums. I've worked with a whole lot of Muslim artists who a lot of people don't even know of, just because I think they're dope. And I think let's cross promote, you know what I mean? Over, you know, so I feel that way, but I realize that it needs to be over time doing that and networking and doing some of the stuff that Zara's talking about, you know, because I've done a lot of that stuff over the years. I learned that it's not enough when you're also trying to eat and survive at the same time, because it's not sustainable. Like, what happens is it's not sustainable, because then, yeah. And we know that consistency is key to building anything. You have to have, that's why people get small business loans in upwards of $200,000, $300,000, because they know they have to have a concerted campaign for 2 years, 3 years before they see results. And what happens is, a lot of times we start this stuff, but because money goes dry and then we got to feed our families, we have to drop off for months at a time to come back. And that has been my experience, which has made me say, okay, I know we got to still do the networking, but it has to be, so we have to find a way to sustain it over a long period of time. You know what I'm saying? And then maybe that model is, and what we talked about is, hey, you know, if we get 5, 10 artists to put $100 in a month for a person who just does PR. You know what I'm saying?
Right. We talked about this like 3 years ago.
Right. We talked about this. We talked about this, right? But finding that person who understands the nuance of our particular market has been hard as I don't know what. You know what I'm saying? So
yeah, no, that's something. No, it's like everything that you're saying, and I believe I told you this too, Layla, is that like we don't have any that reaches our specific demographic. Like, it just doesn't exist, and something that's on an affordable level. So it's definitely something that I feel like people would be willing to invest in, but someone has to have these thoroughly built networks, whether it's thoroughly built social media pages. They're able to they're able to get you features. They're able to just do different promotional work and be able to get you out there more. I think that's something that people would contribute to. And I've talked about this not even just for artists. I've even talked about this on my social media about the need for Black Muslims, particularly, to be able to get more into social media marketing. I never really fully understood, like for someone who I paid for business coaches, I paid for social media marketing coaches and things of that sort. So I've invested money into the significant amounts of money too. So it's always kind of just baffled me, you know, why aren't there more Muslims? Why aren't there more Muslims in these fields? Like I just have not really come across Muslims who know how to market on social media for the Muslims. Now I'll see different groups who they might have people within their own personal networks or within their own little, but to really know, like, okay, I can go here, pay this person, and they're going to knock this out the park, and they're going to reach my demographic, and they're going to give me the views, and they're going to be able to create the ads and wherever else. I'm not seeing that. And this is something I feel like is really crucial, and we're constantly behind in our marketing in the community. Like, even if you look at the mastheads, and I'm like, why doesn't your masthead have an up-to-date phone number on their website? Like, why doesn't your masthead have a website? Like, it's just like, it's 2017. Like, what the heck is going on? Yeah. You know, so like we don't even have. I mean, we're still just like kind of winging it, like just freestyling out here with everything. And so, like, you know, Ish was saying about having something that's sustainable in the long run. I think that it takes more planning, for one. I get a lot of people in a group for authors the other day posted, he was asking about the publishing process. And on the last thing on the list, he had at the bottom of the list was promotion. And I'm like, promotion comes before all of that. Like, you're going to put together this book, you're going to have this product and have nobody to market it to because that was the last thing that you thought about. So we kind of have to retrain our thoughts and you know, get ourselves in a business mentality and not always have such a hustler mentality, you know, and when it comes to doing things, and really think about it from a different, more education. It might take some more investing, some more learning.
I got to tell you something else.
Go ahead.
About that.
You're breaking up for me too.
I had a few authors that did the promotional first.
Yeah.
Authors that did the promotional first, the book for content editing, and I'm like, this is not a book.
Well, there has to be some type of medium.
But that's the conundrum. But that's the problem. The people who know how to promote, the stuff be whack. And then the people who have the money to actually put in promotion, it'd be like garbage. And then the people who do the greatest stuff, they'd be like, dang, the promotion is lagging.
Right. So like, even like, for example, you know, like today I started working on my projections for 2018, right? So we got about 5 or 6 more months before 2018 already comes. I'm already working on planning events for 2018 because I understand that in order to grow, in order to get a bigger budget, in order to get more sponsors, it has to be way further in advance than just 6 weeks or 2 months or even 3 months. You know, these things need to be planned in a year ahead. So even when it comes to producing art and putting things together, you need to look at it from a marketing perspective and a marketing plan, and not just, I finished my book this week, I'm going to promote it next week, and I'm expecting people to support it. Like, no, you need to, you know, create some type of media tour. You need to have some type of promotional events plan, have your social media marketing, all that stuff plan. Who are you going to market it to? Something that we don't think about, which is why I was saying earlier, like, I'm not mad at them if they're not paying us that much attention, because we're not usually doing the things and utilizing we're not oiling the wheels that we need to oil in order to get the attention a lot of times.
I agree. I don't pay with
it. It still might not give it, you know, but I feel like if we were doing a better job.
We can sign off with the viewers, and then we can continue the discussion, because we've been on for 2 hours.
All right.
I know how I'm going to cut this up.
Right.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Khalil Ismail and Zara J, for joining us. And it's obvious that there's a lot of work that needs to be done, and a lot of networking that needs to be done. And hopefully we can get something together where you guys can actually start to talk about, like, where are we falling short when it comes to promoting ourselves and networking with each other. So hopefully we can get something like that together. I'm Layla Abdullah-Poulos. Thank you so much for joining us for this NBA Muslims online discussion. Assalamu alaikum.